Hey students, I'm glad you're here for this week's lesson. We are going to be in Psalm 19, 12 through 14. So if you've got a Bible, go ahead and turn there, and we'll jump there in just a minute. But we've been going through this Bible reading plan, as I'm sure you know by now. But if you're new, as a church, we're reading through the Bible in a year. And each week, we've got some chapters that we're all reading together as a church. And our student ministry is doing the same thing. And Pastor Norm each week preaches on something from that collection of chapters that we read. And then I do the same on Tuesday for you to talk about in your small groups. And so today, again, Psalm 19, 12 through 14. We talked last week, if you remember, about Uzzah. And Uzzah was the guy who in 2 Samuel 6 was walking along beside the Ark of the Covenant. It started to fall. He touched it, and God struck him down, which is a kind of a passage that maybe gives some people some pause. Maybe you have questions about that passage. But we talked about that and why Uzzah was actually struck down and some reasons why that happened, because it wasn't just one thing. There was a few things that happened. But you can go back and watch that on YouTube, Facebook, or Instagram, and watch the lesson, learn if you would like, and talk about that with us as well. This week, Psalm 19, 12 through 14 says, "Who can discern his errors? Declare me innocent from hidden faults. Keep back your servant also from presumptuous sins. Let them not have dominion over me. Then I shall be blameless and innocent of great transgression. Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer." I think it's interesting whenever we read this passage to see that David is talking about two types of sins. He's talking about hidden sins, hidden faults, as he says, and presumptuous sins. David is acknowledging that there are sins that are obvious transgressions of the law. And what I mean by that, there are things that you do that are wrong, that you know when you do them that they are wrong, right? Like there's no question. Things that we know we're doing, that we know that it's wrong without having to, we don't have to look it up, we don't have to have somebody tell us. We know there's something in our life that we just did that was wrong. They're presumptuous sins. But he also acknowledges hidden sins, the kind of sins that we need help to identify in our lives. Maybe we don't realize we're doing it. The presumptuous sins are the ones that are obvious. It might be the thing that you struggle with, the thing that you pray for help with, the thing that you have an accountability partner to help point it out in your life and to help you with it, that you say, hey, can you text me and ask me how I'm doing with this struggle that I'm dealing with? The thing that you know without a doubt that it's wrong. The sins that often get highlighted in youth sermons or in sermons on Sunday morning. The things that we talk about. The blatant, obvious wrongdoings. And David doesn't make light of those things at all. In fact, he alludes to the fact that they are the sins that could easily have dominion over us. Case in point, in last week's reading, we read about David in a story that, it's one of the most popular stories of David's life. We've got David and Goliath, and we have David and Bathsheba. David sees a woman, and he looks at her lustfully. Right? He sees her bathing on the rooftop, and he lustfully looks at her and asks people, hey, bring her to me. And then he has a adulterous relationship with her. He gets her pregnant. And then one thing leads to another. To cover everything up, he ends up killing the woman's husband because he thinks he's going to be able to cover up his sin and hide from it. That was a sin that, as this talks about, it had dominion over him. He looked at a woman lustfully, and that led to a chain of events that ruled his life for a period of time. It wasn't just a one and done kind of thing. That sin had dominion over him. Every decision that he made, every action that he took for that period of time revolved around starting with him looking lustfully at Bathsheba. We all have sins in our life, right? We've all got those things. The sin that so easily entangles, as Hebrews 12 puts it. My ESV Study Bible says that these are the things that we do with arrogant disregard for the law. Which sounds pretty harsh. Like, we don't like to admit that we have arrogant disregard for the law. And you might not characterize your sinful actions as arrogant disregard, but they are. It's the things that we know God is telling us to do, and we know what he says is right, but we do something else anyway because we think that our ways are better. We think that the pleasure is worth the consequence. Whatever it may be, we arrogantly look and we say, God, I know you told me to do this, but I'm going to do this instead. That's arrogant disregard for the law. But David also addresses the hidden sins. And these are the things in our life that are really kind of tricky to deal with. David even asked the question, who can discern his errors? And he's asking that, he's like, I don't know how. Who can discern my errors? Who can find these things in me? And the answer is that only God can. And David even he asked that question, and David points out that we oftentimes are incapable of seeing some of the errors in our own lives. Maybe the thought patterns, right? Like you probably have some thought patterns that you don't realize that they're sinful, but maybe God points them out to you sometimes, or the pride or the arrogance that happens in our lives that it's so flippant, it's so casual, we don't realize that we're doing it, or we don't even realize that it's sinful because maybe it's second nature to us, or it happens without us realizing it. You know, there's things that happen in our life that are hidden faults, as David mentions. And I think this is a very timely passage for us to be looking at amid everything that's going on culturally here in the U.S. right now. And I don't want to make this all about race. Like, not everything that we look at in the Bible needs to be, needs to talk about race right now. But when it comes up, we need to talk about it. This issue that we're facing right now isn't about law enforcement, because there are some incredible men and women who are serving in law enforcement that do a great job, and they serve their community well. And this issue isn't about looting and rioting. That's distracting us from what the real problem is. All this is going on right now that we're seeing in our communities that surround us and across the country and even the world at this point. The real issue is that we as Christians should take this time to ask God to search our heart and reveal to us the hidden faults that are in our lives. Maybe you've got friends that are people of color. Maybe we don't use racial slurs, but there are issues that the Lord can reveal in our lives. Maybe you just say, God, search my heart, point out these hidden faults in my life. What are some things that I do look at wrongly in regards to my brothers and sisters who are of color? Maybe there's just some thoughts that creep across your mind. Maybe there's things that you don't realize are going on in your life. But if you ask God to reveal the ways that you look at people differently, God will do that, because God desires us to look at all of His children the same. We are all creations of God. We are all created in the image of God. Red, yellow, black, and white. Every single one of us are created in the image of God. And that is how God desires for us to view His people. There's things in our life that will only show up if the Lord reveals them to us. And so that, again, that might be racial things, or it might not be. It might be pride, like we mentioned earlier. And this is about the things the Lord reveals when we ask Him to reveal them. For me, the Lord's begun working on my heart in regards to pride. Right? Like there's been racial things over the last week that Katie and I have been talking about, and I've been asking God to search my heart, and He's pointed some things out. But another thing that He's working on me with is pride. That's what He's revealed to me as I have asked Him to reveal things to me. He's working on me. He's growing me. He's refining me. And my hope is to live out to the end of verse 12 and verse 13, when it says, declare me innocent from hidden faults, and I shall be blameless and innocent of transgression. But that can only happen if we know it's there. Those things can only get cleaned up in our life if we are aware that they're going on in our life. And so the challenge for us is to address the obvious sin in our life, find ways to get rid of it, ask people to help us with it, do better at those things that are obvious in our lives. But we also have to have the Lord point out the things in our life, the sins that we don't know are there, the things that are deep in our heart that maybe we don't know are going on. We've all got those things. And maybe since you read this passage, or since you read Psalms 139, maybe you've been praying that over your life, and God's been revealing things to you, as He has with me with my pride. But I just encourage you to address those things. Don't just look at the surface. Don't just look at the big things. Don't just look at the obvious sins, but ask God to reveal the sins that are deep in your heart. The sins that maybe you don't realize are there. Ask Him, hey God, reveal this to me. Maybe I'm looking at this whole situation wrong. Search my heart, reveal it, show me the hidden faults in my life so that I can grow to look more like you, and I can grow to love people more like you love them, and look at situations more like you look at them. So I hope you guys have a great conversation in your small groups this week. I wanted to mention again, tomorrow, Wednesday, June 3rd at 3 o'clock, we're going to be going live on Instagram, and I hope you guys will join us. We're going to have a great conversation with a friend of mine named Brian Smith, and so we hope to see you guys there for that. Can't wait to hear about how your small groups go, and we can't wait to see you on Sunday as well. Have a great week.